Hi, my name is Lilly, and I'm a librarian at the Rest Public Library in Loudoun County. And today we're going to be talking about what you need to start a vegetable garden. Now, I will say that gardening is a pretty broad topic, and I'm not going to be able to cover everything in one video. So what I would recommend is after you watch this video to check out a lot of our ebooks and digital resources through the library. We also have librarians there to help you with your research, so you can either send us an email by going to the library.loudoun.gov website and clicking on the Contact Us button at the bottom of the home screen, or you can call our Library Help Center. That is at 703-777-0323, and there are librarians who can answer questions and also point you to e-resources as well. So we're just going to go over the basics today, and all plants need soil, water, and sun. So the first thing I would recommend when you're thinking of starting a garden is to make sure the area that you want to plant in gets enough sun throughout the day. So the way that you do that is to pick a nice sunny day like we have today and observe that spot every couple hours throughout the day, preferably from sunrise to sunset. And you can either take a photo of that spot every couple hours, or you can just make a note of whether that spot is in sun or shade. And different things are going to be a factor, such as, what direction the sun rises and sets, in comparison to the area you're going to plant in. Things like trees and buildings that might block the sun are also going to be a factor. So if the area you have picked out gets at least 6 hours of sun a day, that's good for most vegetables. Most vegetables want full sun, which is 6+ hours. If it's getting 3 to 6 hours, you do still have the option of planting shade-tolerant vegetables. So those are things like broccoli, cauliflower, a lot of leafy greens like lettuce, kale. You can also plant radishes and beets. But just keep that in mind that if you don't get as much sun, you're not going to be able to plant things that are full sun, like tomatoes and peppers and zucchini and things like that. So that's going to limit you. It doesn't matter the size of where you're planting. You can plant in containers on a deck or a balcony. You can plant in an existing flower bed in your front yard, or you can dig up, part of your lawn and create a larger garden that way, as long as that area is getting enough sun. That's really what's key. The second thing you want to think about is, what do you like to eat? If you're someone who could eat a salad every day, growing things like lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers, that's going to be a great option for you. If you're not a big fan of broccoli or green beans or something like that, there's not really much point in planting it because it's just going to go to waste. You're going to put time and effort into this, so I would say plant what you love to eat because you're going to be eating it a lot. So the second factor that your plants are going to need is soil. So normally, if you were doing raised beds or container gardens, you would need something to put that in, and you could just go buy bags of dirt at your hardware store or your local nursery. That may be a little more difficult nowadays. There is still a lot of people doing delivery and curbside service. You can also order things online to be delivered at home, so you might be able to do that. Those are some options. If that is an option for you and you want to mix your own planting medium, one of my favorite mixtures is 1 bag of clay sand, 1 bag of peat moss to 2 bags of dirt or compost. And we'll talk a little bit later about how to amend your soil, and that's whether you're just using dirt from the ground or if you're trying to improve the soil for containers and things like that. Another thing I want to talk about is seeds. A lot of companies are still providing seeds online, so you can order them and have them mailed to your house. I know a lot of people are also interested in planting stuff from maybe things that they've gotten from the grocery stores. I know there's a lot of YouTube videos out there about how to plant things from food scraps. I would recommend, if you would like to try that, to look up in a gardening book how to grow those plants from seeds. Unfortunately, a lot of those videos make it look easier than it might actually be. The other thing to consider is that a lot of stuff you find in the grocery store is going to be a hybrid of some sort, and if it's a hybrid and you plant that seed, you may or may not actually get the exact same thing that you planted. Or you might get it something like a tomato plant, but it may not actually ever produce tomatoes. So I would just say it's something you can try. It's actually, if you want to do it, it's a science experiment that you can do. Another thing you can try is if you can get to a local farmer or a farmer's market, or even a neighbor that grows their own stuff. If you can get a hold of heirloom stuff, those are varieties that haven't been modified in any way, and so those seeds are going to be a lot easier to plant. So once you have some seeds, hopefully, the other thing to do is decide whether or not you are going to plant those seeds outside or start them inside and transplant them out later. So the way to tell that is by looking at your seed packet or the recommendations for planting the seeds. So for example, I have some peas. These are things that can be planted outside right now. And then I also have some tomato seeds. These are something that needs to be done inside. And the way you can tell that is that if you look at the back, I'm gonna put this closer, but if you look at the back of your seed packet, this is all your information that you need about planting it. And one of the most important things is this map on the bottom. Almost all of them have these, or some kind of planting zone area. And it's got a map of the country. And if you find, we're actually right kind of on the purple and green line, depending on how far north you are in Virginia. I would err on the side of saying that we're in the green, just because it does tend to be a little bit colder here than it does in the southern parts of Virginia. And so if you look at the green, that tells you when it's ready to be planted outside, which you can see it's April through May and August. So what that means is that you can plant these outside right now, anytime between now and May, and then you can plant them again in August for a fall harvest. Something that I like to do is called succession planting, and so that means you would plant some of your seeds now, plant a few more in 2 weeks, and a few more 2 weeks after that. I especially like doing this with stuff that doesn't keep well, like lettuce and things like that you really need to eat quickly, and that way you kind of have lettuce that's ready to eat, and then a couple weeks later you'll have more that's ready, and they're not trying to eat all your lettuce in a 1 week span. And so if you have something that doesn't keep well like that, I would recommend kind of timing it out. You get plenty of seeds, so it's something you can easily do. The other thing that's on here is it does say full sun, even though some types of peas are shade tolerant, and then it tells you how many days until harvest. So that means if you plant them now, it's going to be 60 to 65 days before you have peas that you are ready to eat. Then it tells you the depth that you want to plant them. So you want to plant the peas 1 inch down in the soil, and then thin means how far apart. So for peas, the seeds are pretty big, so you can just plant them 6 inches apart. If you had something really tiny like lettuce seeds, usually you kind of sprinkle a couple along there, and then once they sprout, it'll tell you how far apart they should be, and you're going to have to pick out the little babies, in between. So with the tomatoes, you can see on here that it says not to put outside. It says transplant, so you want to put them outside, but not until May. And you can also see that it has a much longer period before you can harvest them. So that's why we want to start them inside now, and then move them outside when it's warm enough. So to do that, you could get a seed starting kit, which are the plastic trays, and usually they come with little, things of dirt in them and a lid. If you don't want to do that, the other thing you can do, this is one of my favorite homemade seed starters, is just a cardboard egg carton. You want to use cardboard, not styrofoam. And you just fill it with dirt and put a couple seeds in each little egg spot. Water it, keep it watered, place it in a sunny spot inside that gets at least 6 hours of sun every day. And then when these get big enough to transplant outside, because they're cardboard, you can just cut them and take the whole plant and put it into the ground, and it's biodegradable, so you don't have to do anything else. Another thing you can do is you can create little seed starting containers with a paper towel or a toilet paper tube. So this is half. I cut a toilet paper tube in half, and then I cut 1/2-inch notches on each of the 4 sides, so across from each other. And then the way that I'm going to see if I can do this, it's kind of hard to do with looking in the camera, but you basically fold down one flap and then the other. It's just like closing up a cardboard box, and then when you get to the end, you're gonna see if I can do this. You're gonna tuck that bottom part in, just like closing up a cardboard box. And then you have a nice little container that you can start a couple seeds in, and then when that's ready to go, this whole thing goes into the ground. So when you're getting ready to transplant these out, you have to do what's called hardening off. And so that's basically taking your plants from being in the nice temperature controlled environment of your house and getting them used to being outside, where it gets, all different temperatures. It gets very hot in the day and then cold at night. And so you don't want to shock them by just sticking them immediately outside. So what you do is you have to wait until they have 2 or 3 true leaves. And so I'm going to show you, these are some little seedlings that we have started. And what I mean by true leaves is that when seedlings start, they all kind of look the same. These are basil, and the reason I'm showing you this is that most people know what basil looks like. You see the plants in the grocery store that you can buy of fresh basil, but most little seedlings just have one little sprout and then these 2 little leaves, and honestly a lot of them look alike. So a cucumber seedling is going to look very similar to a tomato seedling and a basil seedling, but once these little guys get bigger, they're gonna start to look like little miniature versions of whatever plant. So once these actually have 2 or 3 leaves, or 3 or 4 leaves that look like basil leaves, or if it was a tomato, it would have 3 or 4 leaves that look like a tomato leaf, that's when they're going to be ready to go outside. So in order to do that, what you want to do is you want to take them outside and start them in a shaded, protected spot and leave them there for a few hours and then bring them back inside. And every day you're going to add a few hours onto that. And then once they've been outside in the shade all day, you're going to put them in the sun for a few hours and then move them back in the shade and then bring them inside at night. And once they've been outside all day, it usually takes about a week and a half to kind of get them to that point. But once they've been outside all day in the sun, then they're ready to transplant. So I had talked about adding organic matter when you're planting. If you are just starting your garden in an area that used to be lawn or is lawn, you're going to need to remove the grass with a shovel, and then you're going to want to loosen that soil with a pitchfork or a hoe or a shovel. If you're sowing seeds directly in, like your peas, I would even recommend getting a rake and raking it, because you really want it to be kind of a fine, crumbly texture. If you're transplanting, so if you have little containers like this, you want to make sure when you're transplanting that you're digging the hole deeper and wider than where the plant's roots are, and then you want to add in either loose dirt or compost to that. And what that's going to do is, because it's such nice loose soil around it, the little baby plant roots will have an easier time getting established, because they're not going to be kind of fighting through big clumps of dirt or rocks or anything like that. So that's going to get them, a good head start. I also had said earlier about adding organic material. So most of us have a clay soil in this area, and it really helps to add organic material to kind of help loosen that up. Compost is great. All of the ebooks on gardening nowadays pretty much have a section on compost. We also have ebooks that are entirely about how to start a compost pile. It does take time though. Another thing you can add that's organic is manure. If you have a neighbor who has any kind of livestock, if you can add rotted manure to the top of your garden, that's going to really benefit your plants as well. And I do say rotted, meaning it's been sitting out for 6 months to a year. Fresh manure has a lot of nitrogen and ammonia in it that will actually damage your plants. So you don't want fresh manure, but like I said, if you can get manure that's been sitting out for a while, it's really good to add to your soil. Also, yard scraps like lawn clippings, leaves, untreated wood mulch, those are all good things that you can add to your garden. It's going to encourage the earthworms to come up. It's going to keep the moisture in when you're watering. It's not required, but especially if you want to do long-term gardening, it really does help your plants out a lot. The other thing you're going to want to do once you get your plants in is water regularly. If it rains, then you can skip watering for a couple days, but you do, especially when you first put your plants out or plant seeds, you do want to make sure that soil is moist in the beginning. I would also recommend once the plants are established, doing one deep watering rather than kind of a shallow watering every day or every other day, just because that's really going to encourage the vegetables to put roots down and find that water. The other thing I would recommend is trying to water at ground level, not on top, but if you're trying to use a sprinkler system or a hose, that may not be possible, but it is healthier for the plants if you can water them underneath at the ground level. It just keeps diseases from spreading and is more beneficial for the plants. And then the other thing you're going to want to do is make sure you weed. Weeds are constantly popping up. It is something that you have to keep an eye out for, and they will, kind of fight your plants for nutrients and space. And so you can do that with a small rake or a hoe, just kind of going in and disturbing them so they don't get established, or if they do get bigger, just go in and hand pull them. So I hope you guys have found this helpful. Like I said, I know it really is just kind of the bare basics. If you guys do have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. And thank you guys for watching. Stay safe out there.